Hi everyone, and in today's lesson we're going to be painting this beautiful blue and yellow titmouse. It's a European bird, but I thought it's such a pretty reference photo, we just have to paint it. So to start off, I coated these gesso boards in two colors. I used some Pyro Red and this Rose Pink from Liquitex Basics, but I could have just used some Pyro Red and a little bit of white. I just kind of wanted to have a little bit of variety in the background. And so I wanted it to, you'll see as we paint how it's kind of fun to have these different backgrounds. So I'm going to go and get a little bit of this transparent red oxide and just sort of put in a little bit of a branch. You just want to have a little place for the bird to sit. So I'm going to just sketch that in, and I'm not going to worry too much about the blossoms. I want to make sure I fit the bird in, and then we can just put some blossoms kind of abstractly into the background. So I'm just going to sketch a little, and you can kind of follow along. Just looking at the shapes and kind of the angles. And I'm also, when I paint birds, I'm not too worried about getting them exact. My bird paintings are just kind of fun and more about color and sort of the kind of the pose that the bird has. So when I found this reference on Pixabay, the royalty-free images that Pixabay has, I just sort of decided that I would pick it because I really like the angle and sort of the way the bird was posed. Sort of a neat amount of light coming from the sun as well. So I'm just sort of sketching right now. Looking at the main shapes. And then the tail, I'm never too worried about fitting that in perfect. I think I'll put a blossom or something in front of that one. Okay, so that kind of gets the first part going there. And getting the sketch over with is kind of a good idea. So I'm going to now start on the color block in. So now that we've got the drawing done, I'm going to keep blocking in. So, all right. So I'm going to start by mixing a little white and using some of that transparent red oxide, and I could use a little bit of that phthalo green yellow shade, just something to mix. I need something kind of neutrally warm for the white part of the bird. So I like to start off with sort of a mid-tone and then build up. So on the bird's little mask here, I'm going to just block in a little bit of that kind of neutral, warm white, kind of gray tone. And there's a bit of the other side of the mask right there. And just sort of block that in a bit more. There we go. Right now I'm just going to keep blocking in all the different parts, and then I'll go and start adding more details. So for the wing, I'm going to keep it real simple. I'm just going to use this black and block in some of that wing there. And when you get in the darkest darks and the lightest lights, you can start to see the bird take some real shape. Okay, now I can get in there and start adding some of the yellow, because right now it looks kind of boring. And I'm going to do the same. I'll use some of this raw sienna and that yellow just to block in sort of a warmer, darker yellow. And I'm just going to make a bit of that kind of greeny shadow color, sort of a greeny yellow. And you really want that to show. So that color, I mixed up some of this cad yellow. When you use the cad or permanent yellow instead of a real cad yellow, it's a lot less money, but it really doesn't have the same power as like a cadmium yellow medium, which would be a lot more powerful. So I could get something like that out, but I'm using this permanent yellow light for this just because it was a lot cheaper than buying the cadmium, and I don't think cadmium's, I think this one doesn't have the same sort of toxic pigment in it, so I thought, well, why not try it? It does the job, but it just, you can tell it's a lot less pigmented. And get a little bit more white up here. I mean, I mixed some white in with some of that, the cad yellow lemon. So you can see how much more powerful the cadmium colors are. Really shows up a lot more powerful. Let's kind of blend that a little. And I just love painting birds because I kind of like how you can just, you know, move those feathers in there like real abstract and really loose if you want to. I think it was Van Gogh that said birds are flowers with wings, and I really agree with that. Okay, so now we've kind of got everything blocked in. I'm just going to add a little bit of that cerulean blue to the bird's little head there. Excuse me. And then I'm going to just kind of use that brown mixture and just sort of darken in the branch. I kind of like the whole thing. It's really kind of blocked in nicely. So I'm going to get a little bit of this quinacridone magenta that I got out here. Or actually, this is permanent rose. And I'm going to start off I'm going to put a few dabs there for where the little blossoms are going to go. And then I'm going to just sort of make a little mark or two for where those blossoms are going to go. Kind of just a placeholder for now. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just sort of blocking in where they're going to go so that when we start adding the background, it's a lot easier to see. And then there's some green leaves. I've got some sap out here. I can just kind of put a few marks for now, really kind of loosely, where those could go. Oops. Grab some of that other one. And the brush I'm using, I'll put a link for the paint colors and the brush I'm using in the description so that you can find them easily on Amazon. And I do get a tiny, 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 tiny amount of money if you use the links to buy. So I have that disclaimer on there. So it doesn't change anything. It just, I get like 1% or something of an $8 tube of paint. So, just sort of putting in some kind of loose marks. I'll put a few loose marks in here for some more leaves. Just kind of make some leafy looking marks. Later I'm going to use the palette knife to finish off everything. So you'll see why I like the red, because I like to see the drama kind of all the different colors coming through. And I like to use my scrapers and stuff to show the background, you know, coming through. So it's just something that you kind of have to get used to doing, is planning your layers. So I thought these red layers look really good with light colors. I'll just show you quickly how the paint can go right down, you know, to the bright color underneath. And so you can kind of go and scrape away. Even on the bird, it can look very modern. And it's just really fun to do, especially if you're not really wanting the same old, you know, kind of painting. I kind of wanted to try different things. You can use, these I got this whole set off of from like Hobby Lobby or something. But see how I can scrape, make kind of more interesting marks. It's going to also kind of combine the background later in the foreground. So I wouldn't do this if I wasn't teaching. I was just kind of giving you a kind of a preview of what's coming so that you keep watching. So now I'm going to sort of add a little bit more volume to the paint. I'm going to add a little white and some yellow and make some of those feathers really pop from the page. So now you'll see why I like starting on this gesso board. It's really smooth, so you can really go ahead and get a lot of paint on there, and kind of, I like that you can go and make it smooth if you want. And then just wipe my palette knife off, and you can start to add some lighter feathers to the little guy's mask there. Get more white in there. Even if you add a little bit of orange to white, you'll find it really gives you a bright white. So when you use the palette knife, don't be alarmed that you won't be able to get like the perfect marks, but you'll get a more interesting painting. I'm listening to birds outside my window as we speak. It's kind of interesting. Always listening. There's so many birds around here. So when I'm painting birds, it's kind of funny because it's like I'm just listening to a whole bunch of birds. And I'm gonna use a color I haven't used before, but I've got this Caribbean blue, and I thought that might be a kind of a cool color for the background to kind of complement the yellows and stuff. So I'll mix some of that in. I don't mind it getting a little bit mucked up a bit, so it's not like perfect. And I'll even take a little bit of green and mix up some greens that I'll use in the background as well. And I'm going to just put some of that next to him and see how it goes. Don't worry about getting it perfect. You can go and get your brush and kind of get in there and get closer to the bird and fix it up. Just kind of mixing up some different shades of that now. I'm adding a little bit more of that red oxide, and I can add in some little bit of darker notes of that same color so that you could imagine kind of just sort of leaves even that were more abstract in there. Can always paint over them. That's the beauty of it. I got a lot of paint on there, so Okay, and I'm just going to put out a little more white here. And now I can take my brush and I'm going to just sort of get it closer to the rest of the bird, and then I can start softening some of those edges and using my palette knife again to sort of wipe out. Looks like I painted over the beak. We'll have to do a beak repair, so that's fine. It happens. Okay, so it's starting to kind of come together a little, except for we need to do, now that we got the background on nice and thick, we can work with the palette knives to sort of get things back on track with looking loose and everything. Kind of a push and pull like all painting. You add one thing and then you go to the next thing, and you might have to make a few adjustments like adding a beak back or something, but not to worry. Just sort of go in there and kind of tweak it a little, and I'll kind of bring some of the edges in, kind of really loosely, kind of soften those edges a little. Go and get some of that white and really kind of get back in the shape around the beak there. And so this is where you can see, I'll have to get the black off my brush before I can fix that. This is where you can use your values to sort of create, like for example, I need this a little darker here so that I can show that little bit of white. Otherwise, if it's too much the same, it's just not going to show. So I have to darken that a little, that area. And now you can see that little bit of his face is, coming towards us. And so now you can see it a bit because I've got the darker paint in there. And I'll smooth that with I'll blend it into the rest of this mess when I start getting into that. And so I'm just going to grab some black and kind of reinstate where his little feet are going here. Same with here. And I gotta fix his eyes now. And clean that brush again. And I need to sort of scratch off some of that paint there because it got too much black mixed in. Put a little bit of that shadow back in some thicker paint now. There are shadows in the reference photo showing up on his chest more because there's some leaves and from the blossoms. I'm not going to put those there because it's way too complex. Not going to get into that. I'm just going to make sure I have his feet going the right way and get a little bit more of that cerulean on the wing there. And now I can go back. I'm going to use my palette knife and add back some of that white. Put back that cerulean blue. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my brush and sort of add a little more blue to the edges there. And just kind of get a bit of cobalt and that brown oxide and white and just sort of frame his face a little better. Because the background's a lot lighter, I just want to make sure. You can see him. And then I always like to make sure I get the little, kind of like a little eyelid in there. it gives the bird a lot of character to really show that. Yeah, so you can start to see that it's taking some shape there. And then get a little dab of white and just kind of make a little bit of a highlight there. So like all things, as you go along, you start to see more. And then you can kind of adjust your drawing. In the beginning, you just sort of start somewhere, you know, and sketch it out and then see where it goes. But then as you paint, you start to see more details. Then you can scratch out some of that red underneath there. Really cool. When you see it from my angle, I don't know if you can see that, but you can get try different things. Like I got this big spatula tool. You can scrape out a good chunk of it. See, now you got these pink flowers, so you can play around with that too, like take out some of that background around those flowers. Look at that, you know. So you can really play around and have fun with that. Going. So you can scrape things off. There's so much paint on there, you don't need to worry. You can go back and kind of blend it over again. And I'm going to mix up some lighter blue. Maybe add some of that green in there. Just sort of play around with the color a bit. see what works. I sometimes like just to add a little variety in the background. So I'll go and put in some lighter white here and there, white with the background color rather, and just sort of you don't want to take away the dark there, because that's where I worked hard to get that darker there, because then it shows the bird, his little neck more. But you could go get some of that darker paint, just sort of blend it with the rest of the painting. Just go get some of that and put some of it next to that bright yellow as well. You can really see it, the yellow kind of come back to life there. And I want to clean off my palette knife and get some white and some of that permanent rose. I think that's a Winsor Newton, Winton, or no, not Winton, Winsor Newton water-mixable oil. So now you can put on some nice chunky strokes for the blossoms. You know, just have fun with it. Put a few blobs here and there. Take a bit of that yellow and I'll sort of connect that to the flower, and some of the blue from the wing, I can drag that across. And I need a little bit of a lighter green in there, so I'm just going to grab some of that lighter green that I had out. And I'll put a list of all the colors in the description. I want to put a few lighter greens here and there. I think this painting's going to take a while to dry after I have so much paint on it. But painting loose birds is something that I've kind of done after painting a lot of loose flowers. So it's just sort of migrated that way. I kind of like it, and I love playing with these backgrounds and just seeing how far I can kind of take the abstract, you know, with it. And maybe I'll just get a little bit of that raw sienna and see how that looks on the branch. Okay, I don't mind that at all. So I think I'll call it quits for now on this one, but I hope you enjoyed this little lesson. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and let me know if you try this out. Happy painting, everybody.